but Bruce Arena said, someday we're going to win this thing. And when we do, we're going to do it in our way of doing it. And I've always clung to that. Like this notion that like if we do, it won't just be because, we hired, Guus Hiddink. We will find our way of doing it. And I love that Bruce has planted that seed, because now it makes you think we could win 2022. We can't win 2022. We can't. It's impossible. Unless...
So to 2002, back when Ben Affleck was people's sexiest man alive, the M&M show was the biggest selling record. Sanyo released the first cell phone with a built-in camera. This is also the first World Cup Brendan Hunt really, truly, I believe, watched from start to finish. Take us back to where you were then, a 29-year-old Brendan Hunt. Describe your big picture viewing experience.
All right, so now I've been in Amsterdam for 2.5 years, and this is the first World Cup that I've had build up toward. I haven't just, opened the paper the day of the opening ceremony and found out that the World Cup is starting. Like I had been tracking qualifying, which I didn't know that you had to qualify for World Cup. I had, and this is not, of course, something that happens just by dint of becoming a soccer fan, but by the unique circumstances of living in Amsterdam, I had a friend who was on the national team because an American named John O'Brien was playing for Ajax, met him at the one bar in town that would show NFL games. Met him, I think, that earlier that year by through Jason Sudeikis, actually, because Jason, knew that the Ajax player was here, and John was playing pool with his buddies. So Jason comes up to me, whispers in my ear, "I just put a quarter down on the pool table. Get ready. We're gonna play with the Ajax guy." And now, to this day, John and O'Brien and I are friends. Holland, who I was devoted to as much or more, because I'd actually gone to their games at that point, did not even qualify due to the hubris of Louis van Gaal. Don't get me started.
Yeah, it's a redundant sentence. It's just due to Louis van Gaal. The hubris is just implicit.
At the theater I worked, Boom Chicago, everyone had become a bit of a soccer fan. We were all going to watch the USA's first game against the mighty Portugal, the team that had eliminated the hubristic Louis van Gaal, again, redundant. And I get to the bar that day, and it's like 11 a.m. on a Thursday or something. I think it was even maybe the last group to start. And none of my friends are there, except my friend Doug and his dog. Doug's not in Boom Chicago. Where is Jordan Peele? Where is my now Ted Lasso partner, Joe Kelly? Where is Josh Myers? And I text them. They've decided on that day to go to an amusement park. An amusement park. And what they miss is the single greatest possible launch into truly loving my national team that I could have ever devised, written, imagined, or experienced. When not only do we defeat the number 4 team in the world and a seeming World Cup favorite, Portugal, by a decisive 3-2, but also our buddy, the guy who lives a 10-minute walk from us, scores the first goal, I think only one of 2 goals of his entire national team career, in the 4th minute. I made the right choice that day, and they all chose poorly.
It was just you and Bob and the dog.
Yeah, that was it. Literally, like there were no Dutch people, there were no tourists. This was a tourist bar. No one was there. This bar was showing the World Cup out of a sense of moral obligation that was instinctive. They didn't have to decide to do it; they were just doing it. But man, I like
to think that somewhere in the United States, Jordan Peele is taping the podcast Roller Coasters today, Roller Coaster Enthusiast today, and he's just as passionate about amusement parks as you become about football. But it was an incredible campaign. We've got to touch on the qualifying experience for a moment, because the USA, for back then, qualifying was never a given, or as we've learned, qualifying is never a given. God bless CONCACAF. Uncut grass or just plain dirt fields with glass and rocks on them, locker rooms that haven't been cleaned for weeks, and it made Bruce Arena tell the press, "I want to puke." Horseback riot police, phantom handballs against Costa Rica, missiles pelted at the US team. Brendan, CONCACAF really is the Star Wars cantina of football confederations.
100%. Now they're trying to duplicate that at various Disney parks. And they get the music right, but they don't get the bags of urine as authentically
Yeah.
as you would
Flying
like.
for the corners. God, I love that's just good times. The old bags of urine being flung at our American corner kick takers. The first game in Guatemala. I think the Guatemalans put the game in Mazatenango, a 3-hour bus ride from the airport deep in the jungle near active volcanoes. 40 commandos in ski masks followed the players around everywhere. Nice touch. Local radio blaring music and air sirens outside of their one-star hotel. Bruce Arena does not do one-star hotels. Fans tossed, I love this, M80 firecrackers into the compound. There was no cold water. It was 93 degrees and the US barely escaped with their lives, never mind a 1-1 draw. But they did counter with some of their own home field gamesmanship. Brendan, this cycle was the beginning of the Dos a Cero tradition, where we hosted Mexico in the Arctic Columbus, Ohio, 29 degrees below freezing. The Mexicans called it La Guerra Fria, the Cold War, just in a massive turning point. I think the US had not beaten Mexico in qualifying since 1980. I remember the Mexicans warming up in their own locker room. They wouldn't go out onto the field. Jorge Campos wore so many layers of clothes. Brad Friedel laughed that he looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. How much pleasure does a good old Dos a Cero give you? Because it is a truly important US soccer tradition.
It is a thing of beauty. I didn't watch that one because that was a night game, so time zone wise would have been problematic. But I mean, no one could have known at that time. They would have known obviously the significance of finally beating Mexico in a qualifier, but that Dos a Cero would become a thing. That Fortress Ohio would become a thing that even still today we are laying in the glorious aftermath of Dos a Cero, briefly interrupted, much like our qualifications were, and now returned to us. You'll find out about this in later episodes, people. But Dos a Cero, to have a intrinsic chant, because we're not great at terrace chants. We don't have the cleverness of English clubs, and it's too high a bar to even compare ourselves to. We do things on repeat. We do loops. We do samples. But Dos a Cero is organic. It is factual. It is taunting, and it is glorious. And it started that day, and never forget.
That was brilliant, by the way. Thank you. We do loops. You'll never sing that. I love a Dos a Cero. It's just the Dos a Cero is a tradition that's based on just long, unfulfilled desire, a sense of true delirious Schadenfreude. And this one started so long ago. Brad Friedel and Casey Keller both still had hair. I crap you not, America. The US wobbled a little in qualifying, but then didn't lose again. After September the 11th, first came a 2-1 win over Jamaica in front of 40,000 at Foxborough, with the football line still completely visible underneath. Fans wore red and American flags. They chanted F bin Laden as the US invaded Afghanistan just hours before kick-off. The live television broadcast of the game was cancelled, which Bruce Arena told the team in the locker room before the game. And we got to talk about Bruce Arena, Brendan. What a figure. An American coaching legend, also weirdly a lacrosse assistant coaching legend at Virginia, who turned football figure, really legit as the granddaddy of American men's coaching trees. How would you describe Bruce Arena to someone who never met him before?
He's your gym teacher from New York who also gets called upon at the drop of a hat to substitute for literally any class in the building. And he does so easily, with great acumen. And also, by the end of that 50 minutes, everyone feels a little smarter than they did when they got there.
We don't need a lesson plan.
What are we doing today? What is this? Oh, Coleridge. All right, everybody, here's the thing. We're going to Xanadu and we're meeting Kubla Khan. And in Xanadu to Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dome decree, not erect. Frankie Goes to Hollywood took liberties. All right, open your books or don't.
I just realised Bruce Arena is that teacher that uses the same lesson plan no matter what class he's teaching, because it's not about the lesson, it's all about him. And I always thought he carried himself more like a mafia family boss, just thick Long Island accent, blue USA polo, khakis, celebrated goals with a muted fist raised in the air. This was me. Whatever the goal scorer was, it wasn't them, it was me. The New York Times called him, I love this, often as pleasant as an ingrown toenail. And the LA Times countered that by saying he's just as egotistical, demanding, sarcastic, and mean as he is victorious. And I just think of him as pure Long Island, Strong Island DNA. I think he played for the US once. Still claims he would have had 2 caps, but he couldn't get off work teaching business education at a junior high.
That tracks.
You are right. Yep, the class conforms to my system. And in 2002, the Bruce was loose into the tournament, presided over a squad evenly split between European and domestic-based players. About half holdovers from the 1998 disaster. 20-year-old wingers Landon Donovan and DeMarcus Beasley were the fresh, new, hot talents. Yes, DeMarcus Beasley was once 20. The young stud of the team, though, was that pride of Redlands, California, Landon Donovan. What do you remember about watching young, in his prime, fresh-faced Landon?
You know, I was enough into soccer by then that I knew about the prospects that were coming up, and Donovan and Beasley were ones that would come up in, dare I say it, whisper these hallowed terms, World Soccer Magazine. So I knew that they were legit. But, I wasn't watching a lot of San Jose Earthquakes games. I had been tracking that Olympic team from 2000. On that team in 2002, he just looked immediately like he belonged. He was in perfect flow and perfect sync as passer and finisher. And yeah, he did not miss a beat despite his age and despite his and sure it was not great hair, but it was soccer hair, and that meant a lot.
Yeah, God, it was never great hair with Landon, but there was this young Landon, a swagger, just a seething confidence. It was remarkable to witness. And one quick segue that we've got to revel in, talking to Landon, the legendary New York Times Sunday magazine photo shoot. Really just a classic achievement of men's soccer, probably up there with any victory on the field. Entitled The Boys of Soccer, subheader, meet 7 hot shots on the US World Cup team. The pictures were taken by Dutch photographer and ex-Armani creative director Matthias Vriens, who sounds like a Manchester United defender that they'd sign and never play. Shot at Wake Med Soccer Park in Cary, North Carolina. His goal was to make the team look sexy. He later told The Athletic, "It doesn't matter to me whether it's a man, a woman, gay or straight. I can make anything look sexy. If you ask me to take a photograph of a tomato, it's going to end up looking like a hot tomato." Oh, he didn't do that with Casey Keller, though, staring sultrily at the camera in his $22 crew neck. McBride, head-to-toe Prada, bright pattern pants are tight, but not as tight as his grip on the fence post, like he's about to make sweet love to it. Kobe Jones, hanging from the net, looking stoned or bored or both in his choker necklace. Landon's photo, though, is the most famous. The writer, Pablo Mora, in The Athletic, calls it perhaps the most memorable photograph ever taken in the history of US men's soccer. Brendan, do you remember this? Can you explain this to us?
I do. And again, this for younger listeners, this is going to be hard to imagine, but I will repeat what I said earlier. The perception of soccer was that it was a mamby-pamby sport over-influenced by foreigners and divers. And that image was not helped by a bunch of guys sticking their butts out while wearing Prada. And look, Landon had his mouth in the fountain, and it's not great in of itself. There's no way for it to be good, but he also clearly knew something was up. Like the other guys, they're going at like full smiles, like, all right, let's try it, and they still look ridiculous. But poor Landon.
We'll take directions.
But poor Landon is looking up at the camera like, you sure about this, man? Snap. That's the one. Hey, perfect.
We got it.
Thank you well, Landon. Fantastic shit. You are a sexy tomato. context for the world of soccer, like the 2006 World Cup. I remember going to the World Cup and seeing, those bus station kind of billboards of the entire Italian men's national team. I think it was a Dolce & Gabbana campaign where all they're wearing is black boxer briefs. They appear to have been greased up from head to toe. They're standing in some kind of, I guess locker room is what they're trying to evoke, but it really looks like and I say this with all due respect, a bathhouse. And they're all just standing there like that, looking at the camera. Was there any mockery of them in Italy? No, because those motherfuckers then went and won the World Cup. So in and of itself, a accidentally homoerotic photo shoot does not necessarily guarantee failure or problems. But in this country, at that time, it was not helpful.
Top Drawer Soccer called it the least sexy photo shoot of all time. And in perhaps the most American soccer thing of all time, the water fountain from Donovan's photo shoot, it now stands in the US Soccer Hall of Fame. And with that photo shoot as the marker of form, the rest of the world really expected the USA to better the last place finish of 98. Arena kept saying he believed his team could win it. And they arrived in South Korea, Japan, the first World Cup held outside of Europe or the Americas, first jointly hosted one as well. Again, this was very much a post-9/11 world. Huge 500-strong police escort followed the US team everywhere, SWAT team behind them. And that first game against Portugal, the Portugal of Luis Figo, the Portugal of the golden generation, ranked 5th in the world. Figo, recently the most expensive player in the world and reigning World Player of the Year. The US, it felt like it had no chance at Suwon Stadium when it kicked off with its roof shaped like a bird's wings. But it turned out to be where the United States men's World Cup journey would take flight. Can you describe this Portugal team for us, Brendan? Gold of chain, olive of skin, just a healthy level of Mediterranean body hair.
Yeah. So, Euro 2000 was the first tournament I paid a lot of attention to. And famously, in that tournament, when they were eliminated by Zidane's France on that rare phenomenon of football at the time, the golden goal, they did not exactly take it on the chin gracefully. They went absolutely ballistic at the call by the ref when it was, to this day, the most naked handball I've ever seen by human cotton candy dispenser Abel Xavier. And it was so obvious and so egregious, and the railing at the ref was like really, really off-putting. And of course, Man U was watching it, and then we were like, oh, we'll do this for a while. That's gonna sound fun. That's gonna get us an extra medal or two. And then Portugal, eliminated the Holland I'd come to love. So I feared Portugal. I disliked Portugal. I did not expect a result against Portugal, and for us to dominate them. I mean, John O'Brien scores in the 4th minute.
So essentially, Brendan, this is the team that take the field that they definitely look like they wore Speedos when not being paid to play soccer at an elite level. This is a savvy team, a suave team. All their best players since Eusebio had come through at the same time. Golden generation. They'd won consecutive under-20 World Cups in 89-91. They just got to the semi-final at Euro 2000. This was meant to, for them, be the time, the place where it was all going to come together. Instead, they met us, the Yanks. The US just rushed out the starting blocks. 3-0 lead. I even thinking about it, I can't believe it. We didn't believe our bleary eyes. It was a 5 a.m. kickoff in the United States. Your friend opening with the tap-in. You knew John O'Brien, just a very cerebral footballer, a very mercurial footballer, a distinctively maverick human being. But when that gentleman who the gentleman who slapped down quarters on the pool table like a Tom Cruise character in Top Gun in any bar scene and said, "We next, guys," you knew that human being. What did that feel like?
It brought home the entirety of the grandeur and scope and history of football. on a personal level. It cemented the idea that this guy is a real person, which means that they're all real people. And then, especially the people who are from where I'm from, ever since that first game I watched in 1994, where I didn't understand why people were cheering because the Colombian guy scored that goal for us, there's no honor in that. Why are we celebrating? All those guys were just real people. And I had known no soccer players as a kid. Now, a bridge had been crossed. The whole thing landed on me. And I just saw a world of like potential. I saw a world of accomplishment yet unaccomplished. It landed in a very, very personal way. And like that's the part that I kind of feel bad about in telling these stories, because I know, that's the one part where you can't just be like, and then I listened to this podcast and I took their advice and I befriended a national team player. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't bother them. But it was cool.
That is the profundity of football, that it makes you feel just a depth of transcendent emotion that is almost, but you made it. It's almost ineffable. You made it articulate. And at the same time, Bruce Arena just celebrated by hiking up his khakis. He knew more was coming. This was just the beginning for Arena's team. And God love to your friend John O'Brien. Such a cultured, injury-prone footballer. Went into psychology after he retired, which actually shortly after this moment. Landon had a shas go in. And you saw his Invisalign as he sort of shrugged his hands in an apology celebration. It's just 20 still. His hairline hadn't fully receded from view. Third goal, Brian McBride.
Woo!
Your big target man who barely scratched 6 foot, but seemed to be like 8, 9 foot. I mean, he was just enormous in our imagination. Brendan Hunt, how soiled were your pants in that moment?
Well, luckily, Raj, it was only 11:30 in the morning, so I was able to keep it together. But emotionally, I changed my emotional pants 3 times in that 45 minutes. That was a mess.
I love that notion. Everybody listening, as football fans, we're all wearing emotional pants. Brian McBride, man, so brave. Dude would stick his head into any dangerous situation to win his header. He'd broken both cheekbones, I believe, by this point. He once broke his nose, came back on, scored the winner. Honestly, feels more natural seeing Brian McBride with blood streaming down his face than just like clean. His uniform really wasn't complete without just looking like he just was bleeding out onto it. Just a human battering ram. His nickname was Muckhead. And Muckhead had put us 3-0 up after just over half an hour. Wild. This is against, again, the Portugal golden generation. Yes, they came back. A dreadlock Mastriani tried to tackle Figo, who lifted the ball over him, kept going. Mastriani later said, "Man, I haven't seen this in MLS," which I just love as a quote. And it got nervy. A Jeff A. Goose trademark own goal made it 3-2 with 9 minutes left to play.
Exquisite.
God love you, Goose.
Exquisite.
But they had, Bruce Arena must have had turtle head, but he didn't show it. That must have been the most nightmare-inducing kind of turtle head. What feelings did you experience in this moment now? A legit, undeniable, major US victory.
This was the first match that I had build up toward. This is the first match that I'd been looking forward to for, the months of when the World Cup is happening, when you know what the draw is. And I still went into it with trepidation because I had memories of the Iran game and memories of finishing last out of 32, even though they weren't as close to me in 4 years earlier. But now I was ready, I was up for it, and I really wanted it. And they came through. They came through in this unbelievable, dominant way and showed that no matter what degree of underdogs we are, we can do it. We can do it anytime. It doesn't mean we always will, but we can. And I have seen U.S. soccer through that prism ever since. Bruce Arena, I'm not a smart enough soccer person to know, what his tactical acumen was, but he very famously, going into that game, and I assume before most games, said, we want to have the first tackle, we want to have the first shot, we want to have the first card, we want to have the first everything. And then suddenly we're 1-0 up on Portugal in the 4th minute. There's something very American about that being your main coaching principle. And he later, I think it was before the 2006 World Cup, I've actually looked for it because I know I've read it, but I can't find it. I think it was an interview with the New York Times. I don't know. But it was definitely a build-up to a tournament. And he said, someday, I'm paraphrasing, but Bruce Arena said, someday we're going to win this thing. And when we do, we're going to do it in our way of doing it. And I've always clung to that, like this notion that like if we do, it won't just be because, we hired, Guus Hiddink. We will find our way of doing it. And I love that Bruce has planted that seed because now it makes you think we could win 2022. We can't win 2022. We can't. It's impossible unless we're just doing it our way of doing it. We have our guys doing it our way. Anyway, Bruce was not only the right coach for that moment, but he was also a font of hope and belief in a very American way that I will always treasure. Footnote, I once stood next to him at a blackjack table after a friendly in Germany in the build-up to 2002 where they lost 4-2 against Germany. That's a whole thing. But I was not good at blackjack, and I was very nervous. Standing next to Bruce Arena, I was to his right, and I hit, and I had a 7. He had like a 4 showing, and Bruce Arena, yes, he's a Long Island, possibly mobster and or gym teacher, but he's also a little bit snagglepuss because he literally went, oy vey, he took my 7.
Oh, first rule of blackjack: you don't take Arena's 7. Does Arena know when to hold them and know when to fold them, like Kenny Rogers?
He knows when to complain because like 5 minutes later he was still going, my 7. Oy vey, you took my 7.
I've got to tell you, Bruce is an untapped resource for comedians and storytellers the world over. And I do think this may be if this is the only legacy of this podcast, just comedians doing Bruce Arena bits, we have done our work. Bruce Arena's US went on to tie South Korea. Clint Mathis, who'd had his roommate shave his hair into a slightly bizarre mohawk after being benched for the Portugal game. Perhaps it was just ridiculous enough to distract defenders so he could pull off a delicious trap and volley out of nowhere in the box. And Clint 1.0, was really the bad boy of the group. Bruce Arena used to publicly complain about his fitness and, quote, he used to talk about his refueling. He used to talk about his refueling habits. He was really, Clint, like a Ted Lasso character before his time. Do you remember Clint Mathis?
I remember, well, there was that friendly that I went to in Germany, in Rostock, and we lost 4-2, and the only bright light was Clint. I think Clint scored both goals, and at least one of them was from outside the box. And the build-up going into that tournament was Clint Mathis, here he comes. I think he was the cover boy of Sports Illustrated. Like, it was going to be all about Clint Mathis. So weird that we would then beat Portugal without him. But then him scoring in that South Korea game was like, oh, here it comes, y'all. This is our Inigo Montoya moment. I am not left-handed. We've got Clint Mathis. And then that was all we heard of him going forward.
This is the man whose nickname was Cletus, a yokel redneck Simpsons character, and he liked his nickname so much he got Cletus tattooed on his back. He had a 5-inch sword tatted on each arm. He was the self-dubbed Dennis Rodman of the team. I would love to see Bruce Arena just like going up to him eye to eye and just be like, you took my 7. You took my 7.
Oy vey. Oy vey.
You took my 7.
There's not many national team coaches that are written by Neil Simon, but Bruce Arena will bring you that odd couple, prisoner of 42nd Avenue energy anytime you want it. Prisoner of 23rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue? Left on the 42nd floor? Forget it.
I am just hiking up my car keys in tribute as we saw his legend higher and higher. Brad Friedel saved a penalty. Got to talk about his accent quickly. You spent a lot of time in England without sounding like a bastard offspring of the Mid-East and Middle England. How do you understand the Brad Friedelology?
So, yeah, to those who don't know, Brad Friedel played for a long time in Blackburn and other parts of the country, and occasionally could be heard to have a Madonna-esque faux British accent when he was speaking regular plain English to American people. And I would like to mock that, but, I've spent the better half, I guess 2/3 of the last 3 years here in this country. And Roger, I kid you not, about a week ago, I non-ironically used the word crikey. Something about being here does it to you. And right here, folks, I'm going to show you. You won't see it, but I'm going to show Raj. This is the flashlight on my phone, except lately I call it my torch. It's the torch on my phone. And if I don't like it, I'm going to throw it in the bin. This is happening automatically. It just happens to you.
These are words, though. Friedel adopted the whole accent. And I'll just say, by the use of crikey and bin, you are 2/3 on the way to becoming Blackburn's starting goalkeeper for the 2023-24 season. I'm just warning you. God, our dreams, though, were levelled late on when An Yong Hwang scored and celebrated with a poorly synchronised speed skate to protest the top Korean short track speed skater being disqualified for the Winter Olympics so Apollo Ono could win. Speed skate bants are the best bants. We then got bare bottom spanked by Poland, a game which is forgotten mostly because Poland hadn't even invented Robert Lewandowski yet. But the Koreans at the same time beat 9 men, Portugal 1-0, and as they scored, the US bench, still down 3-0, leapt up cheering and clapping. The USA was through to the knockout rounds, the round of 16, but they'd face, because of course it had to be them, the World Cup writers. They don't muck around. Brendan, Mexico.
Like, I knew just enough to know at that point that we do not like them. That it is a wonderful nation of wonderful people. They are glorious neighbors. But football-wise, we cannot lose to Mexico. We just cannot. It was also clearly an opportunity, like a team we had just beaten the year before. This is a chance to get to the quarterfinals, which we knew we had not been to the quarterfinals in a long-ass time. And so I watched that game. I was back in Chicago by then. I watched it at, do you remember a faux Irish bar called Fado?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I watched a few games there. I think I watched...
Sadly demised chain.
Yeah. I think I watched Ireland, Germany there. I watched a few games. Anyway, it was packed. And to be in the kind of soccer bar atmosphere that I had experienced in Europe, but never, ever experienced in America, but that I was able to find for that game, felt watershed.
Ahead of that game, 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time kickoff over here. I always remember 4 hours before it kicked off, George Bush, the president, phoned in and said this.
The country's really proud of the team. And a lot of people that didn't even know anything about soccer like me are all excited and pulling for you.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As you know, in sport, you can never predict who's going to win a game. However, I can predict that this U.S. team is going to give a great effort today. We know we represent the greatest country in the world, and
absolutely,
we're going to give the kind of effort that you and all Americans will be proud of.
Well, I appreciate it. I just hung up the phone a little earlier with the president of Mexico. I was gracious, and I hadn't declared victory yet, but I felt pretty confident calling.
Well, thank you, sir. We feel confident as well.
Still the only US knockout winner of the World Cup, a bloodbath of a fist fight, 10 yellow cards. Arena later called it an easy afternoon. Oh well, Bruce. Claudio Reyna's surging run created the first goal. The original Captain America, Reyna, upon which all other reboots are based, Landon sealed the win, stripped topless to show off his pubescent bod, newly sprouting his proud 6 strands of chest hair. And of course, pantomime villain Rafa Marquez went kung fu fighting, kicking Kobe Jones' backside while simultaneously trying to decapitate him with the head. But it's an amazing move.
It really is.
Really, at the end of the day.
It's astounding.
After the game, US team cracking beers on the team bus. Someone pointed out that they pulled up to the Mexican bus. So nearly the entire team went over to the window, raised their beer and taunted them. What was going on in Fadek in that moment?
Just jubilation. It was just merry and fun. Like, because at that point you're thinking it can go forever, especially as like a new fan, you don't yet fully know that hope in football only exists to punch you in the face with its best friend, reality. But that was such an amazing game. And I remember the the Marquez red card, which, correct me if I'm wrong, would not go on to be his last red card against the United States.
Oh, no.
Like, you're coasting at that point. Like, everything's good. This is great. Let's go celebrate. And then late in the game, that totally unnecessary, unneeded, gratuitous jolt of what? He did what? You, man! Like...
Into the quarterfinal, and we faced Germany. Oh, the team of whom the English broadcaster Gary Lineker famously once said, football is a simple game, 22 players run around the field, and at the end, the Germans win. That is who we were facing. It was a generously kind 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Brendan, do you remember where you were for this one?
I think I was back in the States, but no, I think I was back in Amsterdam by then, having completed my week in the U.S. that took me to other games. I got to watch the Mexico game in the States, but I was back in what's that city I lived in? Oh yeah, Amsterdam. And this was not a popular game because it was not a popular World Cup in Amsterdam because Holland wasn't in it. But no one was particularly excited about the U.S. team, and no one liked Germany, especially this particular Germany, who seemed so very beatable because they were like, Miroslav Klose against Cameroon aside, like they were not the world beaters of old. It really felt like we had a shot going into this.
Which is when Germany are at their most dangerous. And I've forgotten that detail about how much the Netherlands hate the German team. I remember in my childhood watching the two teams exchange shirts after a particularly bloody battle. And one of the Dutch players just took the German shirt that he'd exchanged with a fellow football player in bonhomie and brotherhood, and then mimed wiping his buttocks with it in front of a delirious crowd. So you were in that setting watching this game as the human tank Michael Ballack scored what would prove to be the winner with a header off a set piece, so bloody German. But the moment that is burned into all of our memory, it's not just a moment, it's a national trauma. Oh, do you remember what happened? And by the way, when I say the name of the American player who was at the epicenter of this moment of just national geopolitical schism, it's going to shock you. It was Greg Berhalter, Brendan.
Greg Berhalter, a tall, lanky, useful center back
with hair, with
a growing sense of tactics, having played in Germany and in Holland, rises in the box, finds his moment, he successfully gets it past greatest goalkeeper in the world at the time, Oliver Kahn.
Yes,
and a youngster by the name of Torsten Frings.
Oh, a bastard.
Not yet to have the Loki-like long locks that were to come. Just a regular old German guy, young German guy. Clearly gets separation from his body to block the ball, not even before it crosses the line, like above the line with his fist. And it goes away. And Hugh Dallas, the Scottish referee, who is also etched in my memory, says nothing. He says nothing.
Torsten Frings. I mean, just picture, dear listeners, a German Dikembe Mutombo just swatting the ball aside from Greg Berhalter, who was so young, he was yet to learn about Nike Air Force Ones. That's how young Greg Berhalter was. And used his hand to deny, to swat away, to no, what would have been the biggest goal in US men's football history with his bloody digits. The sense of injustice just makes it all sting so much more. Hugh Dallas, that's a deep pull, Brendan, that you can remember that from Scotland. Hugh Dallas from Scotland. The detail I remember about...
I don't know why I know that.
Yes, and when we finish podcasting, you will just pick up your darts and throw a dart at a dartboard that contains a photograph of Hugh Dallas from Scotland, a referee who, by the way, has twice needed police protection and has been pelted with missiles from the crowd for games he has refereed on more occasions, and I think I've had hot dinners. After an old firm derby, Rangers Celtic, he once had a brick thrown through the window at his house. It wasn't me, Hugh Dallas, it wasn't me. Really, that could happen to anybody. He went on to celebrate. This is the amazing thing of Hugh Dallas. He went on to celebrate in the locker room with Brazil after they won the World Cup. He was that kind of ref. And because of him and Torsten Frings, you bastard, the US fall heroically, sadly, unjustly, 1-0. How did it feel, that 1-0? It was not a normal 1-0 where you're like, yeah, we're out, we did it. There was the stinging pain of what might have been, Brendan.
It really was. I mean, there's no guarantee that they'd have won if that goal had been allowed or if a penalty had been given. There's no guarantee that we'd have gotten the penalty. But it felt like there was a chance. Like we went toe to toe with them. And the thing is, if we beat Germany, then it's only South Korea, with all due respect, waiting in the semifinal. So it felt like the path to the final was right there. Like we had one foot in it. But unfortunately, Torsten Frings had one fist in front of us.
I love what you did then. By the way, just to complete your point, there was only Brazil waiting for us in that final as well.
But then part of you thinks like, oh, well, this is who we are now. We're the team that makes the quarterfinals and has a path to the final every World Cup.
God, I love your optimism and your. I felt that was destiny or dream. I felt this was a dream, cruelly denied, and I know I wasn't alone in that because Bruce Arena modestly called this 2002 run close to, if not equal, or better than the Miracle on Ice.
Bless his heart. I think this was close to or better than the civil rights movement. If you think about it, it was just really big for our country.
Yep, my work as a podcaster is closer or better than the work of Neil Diamond, Elton John, James Taylor. I mean, it's just proclaim it.
Prince.
Becomes a. There are a few human beings that make the needle fall off the record quicker than Bruce Arena. Landon won the Best Young Player Award at that World Cup. He went on to the talk show tour, became the most well-known American male soccer player since, ever. I think he was on Last Call with Carson Daly at least twice alongside musical guest NERD. Bayern Munich made a bid for Clint Mathis, the MLS, who controlled all transfers, in their wisdom turned down. But he got a higher honour. He ended up on the cover of Proto FIFA cult game Backyard Soccer 2004. Can you sum up the legacy for us? We've covered a lot of football in this episode. This was the tournament that what in your mind?
It was a major step forward, both I want to say publicly and artistically. Publicly in the sense that we were on the cover of Sports Illustrated during the tournament, not just before, during. And the coverage was more than before, and you were starting to see bars get packed for some of these games. That was what I was able to get a taste of in that 1 week that I was home. And I don't think that had ever happened before in the States. And then on top of that, we showed a degree of potential that we hadn't shown, at least since 94, but really kind of ever, because we went that one step further. And at that point, qualifying notwithstanding, Mexico was still the big brother, the big brother who we could not get past. And to really thump them on an international stage was a wake-up call of our potential, of what energy do we have dormant? How far can we go? All things being equal, with everything clicking, and with a roster that is a little bit further along than this one. So it was portentous, I would say.
It was portentous, a word I've never used before. That word has never come out of my mouth, but it was. So yeah, I think we began with Shakespeare somewhere along the way. We'll end with Shakespeare. It was portentous. This really was the tournament that really sowed the seeds for football's growth to me. The games had been on ESPN, ABC, Univision. I think for the first time, Americans could watch the entire World Cup, presuming they owned a trusty alarm clock from their own homes without paying a huge premium. And this was really the moment inside ESPN where they saw the impact of the tournament, the promise, and vowed to invest in their coverage in 2006 going forward. Soccer really with this moment started the transition from a punchline to, I think, it really did part of the counterculture already, and I think we dreamt we could go way beyond that. And next, we will be back diving into 2006, in which aforementioned Bruce Arena and the United States strapped on a pair of wax wings and headed straight to the sun. Subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos, and courage.